Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello, Internet. I'm excited, like always, because I have a pilot here in front of me. And not only a pilot, he's an old friend of the show, Walter Weiss. And he wrote a book. And the book is called Born to Fly. And it is a damn good book. I read the book. And it's one of those books which you read and you read and you read, and the next moment you're finished because you've read 300 pages without even knowing it. And it's a revealing book. It's a book which is very straightforward. And it tells us about his life as a SAAF pilot and then later, I think, over to the SAA. And there is another book coming. So we'll keep you informed. Walter, you're very welcome here and congratulations with your book. I'm very glad you actually wrote it.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, thanks for inviting me again. It's really a privilege to be here. And I can only say thank you. Yeah, the book has been a long time coming. And I finally, I actually got involved with one of the reconnaissance commando guys who helped me with it through a friend of mine's wife. And he sort of said to me, you must limit your book to a certain amount of words. And that's why I stopped the book where I do after my career in South African Airways, which is also quite fitting because I can almost, as you say, cut my life in two, the part of living in South Africa and the one living abroad. And I think the one living in South Africa was more joy and more fun than the one being abroad at this stage in any case.
I have many questions for you. I mean, you always wanted to be a pilot, and that's why you applied for the SAAF, but you didn't actually go to the SAAF immediately. I think the Army grabbed you first.
Yes, and in those days, you put in an application, a document, and then you didn't hear from the Air Force. And I was busy. I got conscripted into services school, and while I was there, the next thing I was called to the commander's office, the company commander's office, and I thought I did something wrong. And I got there, and they said, "Here's your signal. You're going to the Air Force." And as I've written in my book, I was sent to I had to put on my Browns for the first time. I got there and there was this Corporal Visa and he nearly had a heart attack because I just arrived with one set of uniforms. He said to me, "Man, you're going to be here for a month." So I had to return to services school, get all my stuff and then come back. And that was the start in the Air Force.
But tell me, it seems to me that the training of a pilot in the Air Force in the SAAF is actually quite tough. It's very demanding, isn't it?
Well, some people are made for flying and some people simply are not. And in the SAAF, they weeded out the weaklings. That is definite. We started off, we were quite a big course that started. We were over 60 young boys. Most of us were 18 years old. And during the course, a quarter of us got washed. They call it wash, where you didn't make the grades. So 15 of the 60 didn't get wings at the end.
Now, I never met you, so I don't know actually how tall you are. But
I'm 6 foot
matter. Okay, so
yes, it does matter depending on what you fly. If you're flying transport aircraft in the SAAF now, or helicopters, or what they had in those days, light aircraft and maritime, you're fine. But once you get into a fighter jet in a ejection seat, the ejection seat is limited in the length of your upper leg, the length of your body, your back, and your head height. Because if you've got to eject, that seat has only got so much in length, can I say? And then on top of the wing, on top of the seat, they've got two little horns sticking out. That if you eject and you go through the canopy, those little horns shatter the canopy and gives you a chance to get out. If it doesn't happen, then you will break your neck because it will compact your spine on the way out. Everything is designed for specific reasons. That's why most fighter jocks are shorter. And another thing, the shorter you are, I think the better you can pull G's, because your blood doesn't have so far to go up and down.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And I remember now when I was in South Africa, I saw the different cockpits. And I'm thinking now the Mirage F1 versus the C-160, which you also flew, the C-160. And man, it's a lot more comfortable than that Mirage thing. I mean, that Mirage thing, you almost strap it onto you. I mean, there's no space in it. There's no comfort.
That's very true. The unfortunate thing about flying fighter jets, everything is there for a purpose. Like the seat that you're sitting on in your ejection seat is normally what is used for your survival kit is put in there. And they try and fit it in there to give you a flat platform. But sometimes during use, one thing will start protruding at certain areas. So you can get yourself with a damn thing sticking in your bum all the time. And that's definitely not fun.
Well, let's not say it's not fun. I mean, there might have been a few of them who would actually enjoy that type of thing.
Well, you can say that. Well, at least it kept you awake. Let's put it that way.
Is it true that there's always coffee in some way or another on a transport aircraft?
Oh, hell yeah. No, there's a little, they call it the galley, as on a ship. Just behind the cockpit, there was an area where you could plug, and then it's a specially made kettle that's made for aircraft. But it's got a lid on that you can screw down or can lock. I mean, if you go through turbulence, you don't want that hot water to fall on passengers or whatever. So it's specially made equipment. And the thing is as well, in transport aircraft, you sit there for a lot longer than in a fighter jet. I mean, a fighter jet, an hour and a half, and the sortie is over. In a transport aircraft, you can sit there for 6 hours. Then, needless to say, there's also a toilet in the damn thing, because you might need that as well.
Which reminds me of Trevor Bernberg. He spoke about Harvard. He was an instructor pilot, besides being a Mirage AZ, I think. What, groundhogger or something you call them, ground mover or something like
Yeah,
that.
a mud mover.
Mud mover. I apologize. And then I asked him a question in that video. I asked him, did he ever get the idea that student pilots, which you call something else, a pupil or something?
Yeah, pupe.
Puke. Puke or puke?
Pupe. P-U-P-E. Pupe. It's just an abbreviation of the word pupil pilot. But I think we were called pukes as well at one stage.
Yeah, because he said that, I asked him, did he ever get the idea that this pupe is trying to murder him there? And he said to me, no, not at all. He says, look, the guys are trying their very best to qualify. They are hardworking. They try to become a pilot. It's a dream of him to do so. But not all instructors are that nice, are they? So some of them have their off days. Perhaps something happened on the way to work, or they just don't like your face, or something like that.
Well, as you've obviously picked up in my book, it wasn't a bed of roses. Some people just had I don't know, some people just don't like your face, maybe. And then obviously there's also the grapevine following you around. And if you're a bit of a stirrer, you get your bum kicked every so often, They don't like to be upset. Let's put it that way.
Now, do you think that the Air Force, I was always thinking of the Air Force as actually an English type of institution like the Navy, with the Army being totally Afrikaans and the medics in between. Now, you're Afrikaans speaking. I mean, you grew up Afrikaans. And what I've seen in your book is the translations from the English terminology into Afrikaans is not an Afrikaans that anybody can understand.
No, it's horrendous. You see, being Afrikaans and being proudly Afrikaans, I flew the Harvard in Afrikaans. Now, the one word that I used in the book as well is the spuitstuk aftapkraan, which is a shuttlecock. The Afrikaans language is just not made for flying. And I flew the Harvard in Afrikaans, and I realized very quickly this just isn't working. So when I got to Impalas, I converted to English, and it went a lot easier, let me tell you.
So when you're standing there and at some stage you're going to go solo. Let us first ask, what is it to go solo, and what happens to you once you achieve that remarkable milestone?
I think the first solo of every pilot is something exceptional. It's so special because for the first time you leave Mother Earth on your own, and you manage to bring the damn thing back as well in one piece. That's even more special. Um, the first time I went solo, it actually happened so quickly. I mean, I did a period with my instructor, which was circuits and bumps, or circuits and crashes, or if you're good, circuits and landings. And eventually the guy's had enough of your nonsense, and then he stops. And in my case, he stopped in front of the building of the testing instructors, and I sat there waiting. And the next thing, this guy got in. Uh, I can't remember what his name is now. And he took me out, and we did 3 circuits. And he came back and he landed, and he said, "Stop here next to the runway, which is a dirt runway." And he got out, and he was fiddling at the back there. And what I didn't even realize, he was putting a red sock on the tail wheel. And then he got back and he knocked me on the head, and he said, "1 circuit." And I looked at him and I shook my head, and he closed the lid of the back cockpit, and he jumped off the wing. And there you sit, you're going solo, yeah, but it's hard to comprehend. And the first circuit I've ever done on my own, you were sitting there waiting for the guy behind you to crap on you for doing something wrong. And all of a sudden you look behind you, and there's no one. So you've got to get this thing back onto Mother Earth. It's hilarious, and it's quite scary in a certain way. But you have to get used to it.
And then what happens? Do you ask for takeoff permission and you just go?
You ask for takeoff clearance, you line up, well, after you've done your power check and whatever, and then off you go. And one thing I remember is the next thing, I was at the speed where you pick up the tail, being a tail dragger, and then I was airborne. Things just happen that little bit faster because you haven't got the extra weight at the back. And before you know it, it happened so quick that I think I got my mind back under control when I hit the water. Because as you know, after your first solo in the Air Force, your feet is not allowed to touch anything until you hit the water. And they've got this little mud bath there that your fellow pupils chuck you in. Yeah. And I think that's where you wake up, as a matter of interest, when you hit the water.
Don't walk on the water at that stage?
I think I could have if I tried, but I didn't.
No, it's a fantastic feeling. I was just thinking, some of the pilots actually said to me, "Look, I don't really like civilian pilots arriving there for training because they have to untrain them." How's your feeling about such things? Do you think it's a bit cheating to arrive with a private pilot's license and then go to the military, or doesn't matter?
Look, the training is different. The training is definitely different. But let me put it to you this way. We were 60 guys that got to Dakota. Now, in later years, I found out that at least 5 of my fellow pupils had PPLs by the time they got there. And I think it's an unfair advantage that you've got. And not that I was really interested in coming first on course, but they went solo before us, the rest of us, and we couldn't understand. You look at this guy, goodness me, he must be a brilliant pilot to be solo at what was it? I think 20 hours, just over 20 hours, and they were all solo, and we were still struggling. So you start questioning yourself in the first place. Why am I not solo yet? But you didn't know the guy had previous experience. Is the training different? It's definitely different from military to Air Force. Then on the other side of the coin, we had guys with us that were navigators before. I mean, if you think about it, although he was sitting in the back seat of a Buccaneer, he already experienced the speed that these aircraft flew at. But luckily for me, I managed to scrape through. And as you've read in my book, I didn't make a lot of friends either. So it was quite interesting to the end.
Well, at least you made it. At least you made it. I've got a technical question here, Walter. when we brought out that video of Trevor Bernberg and the Harvard, and if you guys haven't seen it, please go and look at it.
Yeah.
Somebody made a comment there. He asked why this Harvard standing there at Port Elizabeth SAAF has two propeller blades like this. And he seems to think it should have three of them. Perhaps he's seen a picture of them on three. He wants to know why there's two. I've never seen them with three, actually. I always saw them with two. So, you know, anything about that?
Well, look, the more propeller blades you've got, the more power you've got. I mean, if you look at the P-47 and the P-51 fighters, they had 4 blades. You look at the new, what's the Transil's aircraft that they build now, that the SAAF nearly bought. They've got
The 400M.
Yeah, they've got contra-rotating propellers, you know. But it all depends on the power of the engine, on how many blades you can put in the front. And the Harvard has got a 550 horsepower engine, so it definitely had enough power to give it a 3-bladed prop. The other question you can ask as well is, do you need that much power in a training aircraft? Maybe it's better to limit the power so that you've got sufficient power. I mean, I bought into a share of a Boeing Stearman. Now, the Boeing Stearman was a basic trainer in the Second World War. And after the war, they put stronger engines on it to lift heavy loads in crop dusting. And we bought a 450 horsepower Stearman. Man, she was a handful because she wasn't designed for that engine. And it made it a much, much more difficult aircraft to fly, actually.
Yeah, not all of these things are good. But anyways, so you got done with the Harvards despite numerous obstacles, I would say. It's in the book. We're not going to give away anything more than that. And then you got to the Impalas, which were even worse because you don't fit in the Impala.
Yeah, well, as I've written in the book, they sent me to MMI and they had to measure me. And they had this plastic chair that I bent out of commission to get my fat bum into it. And then they said, no, you'll fit into an Impala. And when I got to the Impala, I had to get the pedals back to the rear instead of to the front because my legs were too long. So I sort of handicapped myself, but I managed to scrape through. Now, the Impala is a little Italian lady, you know. I mean, you look at Italian cars, they're not the biggest. Yeah. Well, I want to say the Ferrari, but the Impala had a Rolls-Royce engine, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, they are very well known. I mean, anybody from our era actually remember the Impalas. Certainly, there was an accident with one just I think last week.
Yeah.
We were recording here with a test pilot actually dying in it. Rest in peace. It's really bad.
Yeah, I've got my views on that accident, and then there's a lot of being still in contact with a lot of old SAAF boys. There was a lot of mixed comments. It's at the end of the day, it's just a sad thing that happened, and let's suffice to say that it's not a nice way to see somebody get into difficulty and losing their lives. But you know, at the end of the day, that's flying. You're never sure what's going to happen next, and that's what makes a good pilot and that a not so good pilot. And we all sit there, you know. And luckily for me, I made the right decisions until I stopped flying. At that stage, he did the best that he could, and unfortunately, he ran out of airspace.
Yeah, I was shocked myself when I saw some of the comments. People have no hearts, no dignity, or no honor. You know, some of the comments were just plain bloody cruel. It's like they don't actually realize that someone died here.
Yeah.
But I think with an Air Force pilot, that is part of your life, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes. You know, the saddest thing is a lot of people can talk. And as I've just said, there was a lot of discussion after this. But you've also got to think about the poor guy's family. And the second thing is there will hopefully be a board of inquiry. There should be one. And let's wait for the findings of the board. I hope that the truth comes out. And even so, you know, you're not going to bring him back. hopefully the people will learn out of it so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, that would be good. But then you ended up with Dakotas. Now, flying a Dakota, or actually a C-47, I'm told there is no such thing as a Dakota in the, or a DC-3 anyway, in the SAAF. That was Tiger Willie who told me that in his episode. How do you feel about that aircraft? I mean, to me, it's like flying history, man.
It is. I mean, they first flew in 1935. It is a C-47. A C-47 is what they were called in America. In Britain, they were called the Dakota. So both is actually right. Look, I tell you what, the Dakota was a handful on its own. But once you got used to it, uh, how can I put it? There was always a difficulty to fly the Dakota. And the simple fact of the matter is, it's old, it's underpowered, and it's old technology. So you had to have your finger out to fly a Dakota. But at the end, I think some of my most joyful times in my life I had spent on Dakotas.
Yes, because you were a very young captain, actually. But I just want to say, if I misquoted Tiger Willie, my apologies, Colonel.
Yeah.
I don't want to, there's so many videos that sometimes I do get confused.
No, for sure.
But you were a very young captain. You were actually younger than the guys on your right
On my
side.
right hand side. You see, the thing is, you've got to build up experience in flying hours. And I started flying Dakotas at a very young age. And then I was based at Bloemfontein, where we did a lot of paratrooping. So I was in the cockpit a lot more than the other guys. So when I got to 44 Squadron eventually, my hours were sufficient that I could go for my command checks. And as I've written in the book, being a lieutenant, that was not done after the one accident where 3 people lost their lives. The SAAF felt that lieutenants were not adult enough to become skippers. And then they ran out of people to become commanders. And Commandant Boy Dupree at that stage, he felt that I was good enough to become a captain. And he put his trust in me. And then some people decided that I wasn't good enough to become a captain because they had different views. And at the end of the day, when the colonel found out what happened, he was not too happy with the people and their decisions. But it's all part of life, I suppose.
Well, the one thing I saw in the police also is if you have a fellow colleague and he's got a dad who's a colonel or even a general, man, life is easier for him. I hate to say that, but he's got connections, man.
Well, you'll be very stupid as a major or as a captain to tread on the toes of a little CO whose father is a general or whose uncle is a minister in government, because they've got the connections. And that's how life works. And it's not only in the Air Force or in the Defense Force. I think it's everywhere in life. I mean, if you look at Donald Trump and his son, at least the son put on a jacket and tie when he went to the inauguration. But I bet you he hasn't got the same life as another kid just growing up in New York.
No, definitely not. But that's life. It's no use to complain about it. But there is one thing which you did flying Dakotas which impressed the hell out of me. And I think that's Geraldine.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, how do you get introduced to the bush area when you're going there for a party? I mean, the first time I flew into the operational area was taking reconnaissance commando guys into a dirt strip in the Caprivi. And the next time I landed in the operational area was in Mapacha with a tour group. I didn't even know why they were called a tour group, but they did a tour through the operational area. And they gave a show every night to the soldiers to uplift morale. And I tell you what, we were well treated. United Tobacco in those days, they sponsored the whole thing. So there were free beer for everybody and free drinks. I thought the war was the best thing since sliced bread, to be honest.
Well, it seems to me like a pilot is very much like a paratrooper. It seems that the wings Man, that does something to the ladies. I don't know what, but it seems there's just some magic there.
Well, I suppose if you're on a parade ground and you've got a wing on, then people can see it. But to be honest, if you're either a paratrooper or a pilot, if you go to a pub at night, no one knows you've got wings on. So it's still the good old trying to smooth talk the ladies into wanting your favors, I suppose, or parting with their favors. Yeah, no, life is life. You don't know. As long as you don't got wings tattooed on your chest, I think that's taking it a bit far.
You know what? The old joke of a fighter pilot, how do you know he's one?
He's going to tell you.
He's
He's
going
going
to
to tell
tell
you.
you. He's going to tell you. But somebody asked me also a question here, Walter. They asked me that once you qualified as a pilot, you don't have different type of wings, do you? You're not like a paratrooper where you can see it's red, therefore it's free fall, or it looks a bit like that or like that. Do you all have the same pilot wings no matter what you fly?
When I became a pilot in the Air Force, we all had the same wing, and the general had the same wing. But later on in years, they've got three wings in the Air Force now. They've got a golden wing, a silver wing, and I think a bronze wing. And it depends on your amount of flying hours, which I think is a bit unfair because if a fighter pilot takes off and he goes around the houses and comes back in 10 minutes. A light aircraft or a helicopter fly the whole day, and he's got one landing as well. So, but that's the way the SAAF decided on their wings. South African Airways and all airlines have only got one wing. I was at a flight school in Australia, and all the students had silver wings, and the instructors had golden wings. Now, I think every company decides on what they want.
Now, is there a sort of a brotherhood between pilots? I mean, if you walk into say, an RAF pilot or a US aviator or something, do you people have something in common which you can speak about?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, aviation is aviation. It doesn't matter what aircraft you fly. Um, Having worked abroad, which will come out in my second book, I worked in China, and the fellow pilots that I flew with was Korean, American, English, French, uh, Russian, and I think I've said South Korean. They're all different. Oh yeah, and Canadian. They're all different, but at the end we're all the same, you know. And once you sit next to a guy in the cockpit, when he starts pulling and pushing on the stick, you know what his abilities are. That comes out very quickly.
So you actually, it's possible for you. I mean, I remember this is a stupid comparison, but just hear me out. I remember in the flying squad in the police, the very top drivers, they would go into that cockpit and almost, sorry, into the driving seat, and almost go into a damn trance for about a minute. They would just sit there and they would take everything in, and then they start checking their mirrors, where they're sitting, the steering wheel. You know, it's just like going into that mode, and you could very quickly pick up who's the cowboys and who's the ones who actually can. Is
Oh
that the
yes,
same?
I was. My dad paid for me to come and visit him and my mum when I was down in Cape Town. So I had to fly up to Johannesburg by SAA. And I asked the aerostess if I could please go and look at the cockpit, you know. And that was an old A300. And I walked in and I looked at this cockpit, and there was one gauge that I couldn't understand. The rest I could sort of understand, having flown Impalas and Dakotas. And I looked over and I tapped the co pilot on the shoulder and I said to him, "What is that?" And he said to me, "No, that's a watch." So, yeah, you know, how stupid are you? But I must say that the watch only had one hand. It didn't have three hands like a normal watch. So, but I still felt like an idiot, to be honest.
Now these things happen, you know. There's also an episode coming out on the C-160, which I sat there with a pilot, which we refer to as Tiger Willie. Don't know exactly where he got the name from, but we will record him, I hope. 80 years old now, sprightly old gentleman. Also did the one on the C-47 or the Dakota, Portscoots. And I asked him the same question. It's in the video. On this, almost I said the steering wheel, on the yokes, the stick thing there in front of you, There's like a little watch there. And I was
Yes.
asking him, what's this? And he said, no, it's a stopwatch. And like, man, can't you figure it out? No, no, I
No,
can't
for
figure
instance,
it out.
for instance, if you sit in a holding pattern, you go over the beacon and you fly outbound, but the outbound leg is only allowed to be 1 minute long. So when you go abeam the beacon, you press the stopwatch. When you come up to a minute, you turn back in. So the watch is definitely there for a specific reason. It's not just there to look pretty. Well,
Okay, but this
sorry.
bring me to some of what I think in your book is some of your greatest flying missions. And that is you guys flying to Mavinga. Now, can you tell us about that, please?
Mavinga separates the men from the boys. That was for sure. And the reason being how dark it was. Now, we were flying into Angola, and as you know, the Angolans had radar, uh, which we didn't have. So we had to stay below the radar. And especially the C-130 guys, they went deep into Angola to do supply drops. Everything was done at night and low level. So if there's a mountain, you don't know about it. The only thing we had that helped us was the radio altimeter, but that only gives you the ground below you. So if there was a cliff in front of you, you would have hit it smack bang. And the guys nearly did one night on the C-130. But to get back to the C-160 going into Mavinga, we were flying into this place. Now, at dark moon, you've already lost half the light. Then at that in 1985, Fapla got quite close to overrunning Mavinga. So the battles were in the area of Mavinga, which left the sky full of smoke. So when you were flying into Mavinga at night, the stars were still obscured and there were no moon. So a guy by the name of Louis van Wyk coined the phrase, "You're flying inside a cow." And well, there's no better way to describe it because there's no light in there. And the worst thing is in flying these approaches, out of your peripheral vision, you still know where the horizon is, even at nighttime. And the stars help. But now you're flying into a black tube, I can almost say. So there's no peripheral vision, and you only have your senses in your ears to tell you if you're up or down. And I tell you what, the first couple of times I flew the approaches, I couldn't keep the aircraft on the runway. I was doing a yo-yo, swinging from left to right, or like a dingbat or whatever you want to call it. But you couldn't keep the aircraft in position because without knowing it, the wing would dip and you wouldn't pick it up. And then you correct and you overcorrect. So it took everybody a couple of tries before we realized what to do. And for myself, in the C-130, they had ultraviolet lights. Now, if you put ultraviolet lights on the instruments, you can see what's happening on the instruments, but it doesn't get your eyes back into day mode from night mode. And that makes flying a lot easier going into these dark places. And that's how I did it. At the end of the day, it was like a walk in the park. But I'll tell you what, in the beginning, it took a lot of sweat to get used to it.
So would you do such an approach visually, or do you do it in instrument or both?
Initially, we did it on instruments, and the guy next to you talked you in. But once I got used to the ultraviolet lights, you could do it as if you're flying a day flight. And everything, with practice, it becomes easier. And we got enough practice, let me tell you. We flew into Angola, 86, 87. It was over a year. And me being the youngest on the squadron at that stage, I flew back home for a week to recover, and then you're back up there for a week. And it's all night operations. At 7 nights that you just don't sleep. And being at Rundu, it's not the best in temperature in the daytime. So you hardly got any sleep in the daytime just to do it again the same night. I think we lived on adrenaline.
Can you tell me the envelope, perhaps, Walter? Would you take off at Rundu, then go a bit higher just to cool down a bit, and then go low, or do you keep low?
No, we kept low. We kept low because you don't want to get on their radar, and no one could tell us up to where their radar was. And I think they had, like this, the Air Force, we had mobile radar. So the big trick, and then there's a book out now, MiG Diaries, where the Angolans actually knew about us and they were looking for us. For instance, one night I was sitting on Mavinga on the runway and I saw a light moving past in the sky. And I came back and I said that to the int guys, and they said to me, no, there were no lights. You're talking nonsense. So they made me a, what was it, as a provider of intelligence. I was an E-class intelligence provider. I wasn't telling the truth. I hope they read the book MiG Diaries as a matter of interest.
Yeah, well, we will, because I've got the offers lined up. Or
Yeah.
off soon. I understand that's one hell of a good book to read, but so's yours. If you look back at your Air Force career, do you think that you were born to fly at the right time, or would it have been better for you, say, 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier?
Well, I would have loved to have been in the bushwalk from the beginning. But I mean, you get born and you get dealt a hand and you've got to play it, as they say in cards. My honest opinion, I would have loved to have flown in the Second World War. I think those guys must have had a hell of a time, and it must have been scary, and it must have been exhilarating if you think about it. And some people died that shouldn't have died, but it was the way that the dice were rolled. I mean, you look at Douglas Bader, the guy without the legs. He ended up in a POW camp. Not all the good guys went through the war, sadly. And I think it's the same in the South African Air Force. In the border war, there were some damn good guys that lost their lives. It's just being at the wrong place at the wrong time, I would say.
Before we move on to your SAA career, I just want to ask you, I get the feeling that the Air Force in those days, because of the sanctions, expected, if not ordered, the air crew to stay with the airframe a bit longer than what perhaps would have been safe to do it. Now, I do realize as a transport pilot, you can't really bail out. But was there ever such a feeling or understanding, if not an order?
Well, when you read my book, the one night we had an engine failure on rotation. Now, in a normal life, you will land back at the airfield that you took off from, but we couldn't because the runway lights wasn't actually lights; it was little fires, and once you go past it, you blow them out. And there was no communication with the ground staff, so they couldn't relight the fires for you to give you a runway to land on. So we had to fly back to Rundu on one engine. I did lose a couple of kilograms that night in sweat, I'll tell you, but that was life. We had to save the aircraft because you couldn't replace the aircraft. And everybody felt that way. If you were flying helicopters, fighters, or transport, we were all trying to save the aircraft.
What I want to ask you, Walter, is once you landed there at Mavinga, and I understand as your aircraft comes over these little fires burning, the prop wash, I suppose, would extinguish them. When you land, they offload, you turn around, and now you're going out again. Do they lit the fires again for you to see where you're going, or?
Yes, they did. They did light up the fires again. They had to be quick as a matter of interest because, as I've said in my, when we started the combat offloading, we offloaded that aircraft so fast. It was actually quite amazing. I mean, Andre van Zyl and myself, it wasn't an official record, but we landed and we took off within 7 minutes. I mean, those guys that had to lit the fires, when you landed in one direction, you turned around, you offloaded, and then you took off in the opposite direction. And those guys on the fires, they heard when the engine started spooling up, then they would light the fire. It was all very, very well organized.
Okay, and so would you open your rear ramp before you actually land, or would you keep it closed?
No, you'll keep it closed because you've got a flare to land it, and the ramp would be in the way. But once you landed, and the aircraft was under control, especially the night when we did the 7 minutes, the load masters would start unstrapping the cargo. You'd stop your landing roll. You make a U-turn and you stop. And as you stop, the one load master, which was a flight engineer, but he was in the position of a loadmaster. He would start kneeling the aircraft and opening the ramp. And in those days, we had these 3 toes that sort of stuck out the back of the ramp to prevent the pellets from damaging the aircraft. And that was folded out. The pellets were pushed to the back. Even the co-pilot got out of the seat, and the navigator went and helped at the back. That was only the captain and or the pilot that was sitting in the seat. And then they would on the intercom say to you, "Okay, be ready." And you would open the power, and the aircraft would actually just taxi from underneath the cargo, and the cargo was deposited on the ground. When they tested it initially in the SAAF, typical SAAF way of doing things, they put a bottle of champagne with glasses on the one pallet, and it actually went out, and the glasses didn't even fall over.
Wow, so it was quite an art, but it seems quite dangerous at the same time. I mean, if
It
you get
was.
stuck on or something goes wrong with it, it's serious.
Well, as I've written in the book, the sad thing is that one guy was in the aircraft the one night where he shouldn't have been, and he got injured quite badly.
Yes, that's Major Tinus van Jaarsveld. We've got this
Yeah.
episode as well, and it's sad that these things happen. I just want to say he went on and he became a Alouette and Puma
Yeah.
pilot, actually.
Yeah, life makes interesting twists and turns, and I'm just glad that he got back to flying. I mean, there was no intention on our side to hurt him. It's just the thing that happened.
It's war.
It's war.
It's war. So sadly, people do get injured during war. It's just one of those horrible things.
Yeah.
No, but wouldn't a Lapis drop, would that not have been a better idea than to actually land?
Well, being so dark, remember lapes you do very low. Now in the dark, if you did a lape drops, where would you have done it? Well, look, they did drop parachutes all over Angola when you went deeper into Angola, especially as I said with the C-130s. But um, to produce all the parachutes and whatever, it costs money. It was quicker and easier just to land at Mavinga.
Yeah, and then you would, whoever wanted to go back out again would just jump aboard and then off you go.
Yeah, well, we took out all the boxes where the Valkyrie rockets came in because the guys wanted to build huts for the troops in Omega and all these places. And remember, we did at one stage we were 3 aircraft a night that flew into Mavinga, and everybody flew 3 sorties a night. So you've got 9 aircraft going into a place like Mavinga at night. That becomes quite crowded. Let me tell you. We were kept in communication with each other on VHF radio, so that you know where your buddies were.
And this you fly, of course, without navigational lights or anything on. No
Nothing.
strobe.
We were as dark as what we could be. Now you definitely don't want to give away your position, and luckily we didn't. As this book is saying, they were looking. I don't think the Angolans actually realized what we did at Mavinga. But I haven't finished the book. I'll see what he says.
Yeah, I myself still have to. That's Mick Diaries. That's
Yeah.
what you talk. Yeah. I just want to know one last thing here from you before we get to the SAA is you did describe an incident. I don't think you were the pilot there in command, but you know about it. Where they once loaded a tremendous amount of people on a C-130. They had a very strange technique. Perhaps you can describe that for me.
Yeah, sorry to say it this way, but Pilletjies van Breda, Teens van Breda, he was a C-130 skipper, and I can't remember where they flew into, but they had to troop soldiers, and they had to troop a lot of soldiers. So what they did was they got all the troops to walk in and stand on the cargo hold, and when everybody was in and there was no more space for anybody to get in, he said, okay, and he taxied forward about 10 paces and he hit the brakes as hard as what he could. So everybody fell forward, and it opened up a heck of a space at the back. So he said, load more. So they loaded it again until it was full, and he did that 3 times that night. So they had about double the amount of passengers that could fit into a Hercules, and they were only standing passengers. There were no space for them to sit down. and they I don't know how many flights it was, but they moved a whole regiment or whatever you want to call it, what the army call it. But they moved a heck of a lot of bodies as quickly as possible, and that's how the UNITA people stopped FAPLA, because FAPLA couldn't believe that all these people appeared all of a sudden.
Yeah, it just shows you that boer maak 'n plan.
Oh yes, yeah, no.
But then you left the Air Force and you flew some secret missions, which is also in the book. Now, I don't want to spoil the book for anybody. You have to go and read it to understand what the SA Air Force, or I suppose the entire Defence Force, was doing after the war ended in terms of UNITA. But that I don't really want to reveal. People can go and find out. But then you're now back in training because now you want to fly for South African Airways, which is very Air Force orientated at that stage. I mean, many of the crews would have come from the squadrons.
Yes, talking about South African Airways, we did quite a bit of training in the Air Force. Let's face it, and it was good training. Don't get me wrong here, but I joined SAA, and I've never seen a group of people that were so professional as the guys at SAA at that stage. They put us through our paces, and the first conversion that you do in SAA is as a third pilot, or a boy pilot it was called, because you were called a boy pilot because they step on you all the time. And we were trained on the 747 Classic, which still had the three-man cockpit, two pilots and a flight engineer. And I tell you what, in those days, you know, these slides, they had these slides on these circular contraptions on a slide machine, and you sat there the whole day. And the voice that this American was talking in, it could put anybody to sleep. So to stay awake was damn difficult. And then the other thing was, when you wrote an exam in the airline, it was expected of you to get 100%. Anything lower than 100%, the airline just, how can I put it, frowned upon it, because they wanted you to give your best for future operations. When I joined South African Airways, we were flying around the bulge of Africa, which gave a lot of extra thought when you planned a flight, because the 747 Classic was quite thirsty when it came to using fuel. So you only had that much range in it. And SAA we had to stretch that range to impossible distances to get the operation going. You know, you flew from South Africa all the way to Sol Island on the side of Africa there. It was quite a long distance if you think about it. The first time I flew a 747-300, the stretched upper deck, was from Atlanta in America to Johannesburg. So we had different ways of working out flight plans. And we had certain points on the flight plans where if you get to this point, you've got so much fuel, you can go to this place. If you haven't got that fuel, you must go to this place. We had Windhoek as an alternative on many of the flights. And when you got to a beam Windhoek and you see, okay, and now you nominate your emergency airfield. For instance, we nominated Waterkloof, the Air Force Base, which gives you a lot of extra fuel that you didn't have before. It was all legal, but it was just playing with the books. And that's what SAA did, just on navigation wide. Now, the technical side of the aircraft, those aircraft, SAA aircraft, must have been the best kept aircraft in the world. SAA did their own maintenance. They did their own major maintenance. The engines were, I can't remember the exact word, they had 5 gold stars. Now, for an engine to be overhauled and given 5 gold stars, they're in a better condition than what they were when they were made. We did thrust bump takeoffs where you take off and you use more power that's actually allowed on the aircraft. You take off where all the exhaust gas temperature gauges are actually in the red. In the red, I mean with red lights on in the little instrument, and you still proceed with the takeoff because you know the engine won't fail. I've never seen it in any other airlines, and I don't think they will ever see it again. And I really believe that's a feather in the cap of everybody that was on the technical side at SAA.
So, Walter, tell me, the SAA, I mean, are all pilots the same? Is it possible that a pilot of lesser standards can end up as a commercial pilot flying for something like the SAA, and then you know it's unsafe?
I won't say you will be unsafe, but no two pilots are the same. We're all different. And with SAA, I flew with absolute brilliant people, captains and co-pilots. And the same thing can be said that some of the people weren't as good as the other people, but the ones that were good were so good that they actually stood higher, heads and shoulders above the rest. They were just simply amazing. And I was lucky enough that in my first couple of flights with SA as a boy pilot, I flew with some of the old salts that were old, and they were mostly old Air Force trained guys. And I tell you what, I learned so much. The training in SAA was simply above board. It was way above the rest.
Yeah, it's good to hear that. In the book, and I'm not going to ask you to talk about it because people have to read it, you do speak about the Helderberg, and you have a few theories here there, which is very, very interesting. And that's basically where the book ends. After you decide, okay, you're going to leave SAA now, you're going to go overseas. That's where the second book starts. Now,
Yes.
where can people get hold of this book of yours?
The book that I've written, well, that's what it looks like.
Let's lift it up a bit.
Uh,
There you go.
and this is available on Amazon.
Yes, and we'll
I mean,
put the link in the description as well.
yeah. As is this book, Mick Diaries. It's also on Amazon.
Yeah,
And
so really good.
I've read Mick Diaries now, the first quarter of it, and it's part of our life. You should read the two in conjunction, I would say.
Yeah,
But
because Mick Diaries is about the other side. It's two Cuban pilots actually
yes,
writing
yes,
their story.
yeah. Now the bush war in the air, you can almost say. But I've started with a second book, and the reason why I stopped the book after SAA was the guy that I said that was trying to help me initially. He said you can't write the book longer than so many words, and that's why I cut it off in South Africa, which I felt was one chapter in my life. And once I moved to China, it became a total different ballgame. One thing I would like to say to especially to South African boys, if you do fly, you've got to realize once you leave South Africa, you're out in the big world out there, and you've got to have your wits about you. There's no safety net as what we had in South African Airways and in the Air Force.
Yeah, sadly we can't really on YouTube explain that further, but there is a video. And I'm going to leave a link here in the description as well, and then you will find out why the man is wearing oxygen around his nose. But I have to say, despite that, you're still looking good, still kicking. So thanks for your time, man. It was, for you people would probably not see it, we'll edit it out. But man, it was a strange recording. I had to run to fetch a delivery there in the front of a hotel because I'm alone here. And then they couldn't find the place, and then this, and then that. And well, Walter had to just be with me. I thank you for that. I really appreciate
Well, you
that.
gave me a good chance to have a cough or two, so that was fine from
Yeah,
both sides.
yeah, I got. At the end of the day, I got what I wanted. But man, that's not normally like that. Anyway, I'm leaving the links for the book is in the description, guys. So don't make a comment. Where can I find the book? In the description. Click on it. Go to
Yeah.
Amazon. Order it. Guys, don't be lazy. Okay. Until we meet again, God bless and thanks, Walter. Really appreciate your time.
It was nice to talk to you. Go well. Enjoy Thailand.
Oh, yeah. I'm off to the beach now, man. I'm off to the beach.
It's unfair. It's unfair. Well, Koos is left on a phone calls, and I'm left here to say nothing. I just want to see, does the Mick Diaries fit in this screen? Yep, it's a definite to read. And then this book, which is mine, my life story for the first half of it. It will keep you busy on a cold night, and we'll wait for Koos to return.
Liewe vader. Ah,
Sorry, Koos, ek kon nie so lank praat nie.
dis alright. Fok,
Nee, ek dink.
ek moes hardloop nou seker 100 tree na die ou. Hy het al die moer gepluk. Sê vir my, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Sê vir hom, luister, ek sê, hoe is jy? Toe
Ja,
ek
wragtig.
dis nou baie vriendelik. En toe ek terugloop, dis een van die werkers hier, hulle is besig om plante te plant. Die oud soort van ons tuin oorgevat, hy plant sommer piesongbome en goedjies, maar jy weet dit ons vroeg
Dis
nou
wat
oor
ek
die
doen.
kat se kos het gekom. Dis die groot ding, kat se kos.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.